Third Rock from the Sun was a show that almost didn't happen, but it's a good thing it did, because it was a bigger hit than most people remember. It had the ratings, it was winning Emmys, and it launched the career of one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Sorry French, I'm not talking about you. The show had everything going for it. It was unique, funny, and had standout performances. But then it crumbled. And the sad part is, it didn't have to. When you hear how it all went down, well, it's absolutely infuriating. This is the rise, frustrating fall, and surprising legacy of Third Rock from the Sun. Before we start, give this video a like to show French Stewart some love because I feel kinda bad for my earlier insult, and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Okay, so the year is 1994 and the king and queen of sitcoms were about to pump out yet another golden egg. Marcy Carsey and Tom Werner and their production company Carsey Werner were behind The Cosby Show, Roseanne, and A Different World. When they came knocking with a new idea, people listened because they like money. Their new concept was simple. Aliens come to Earth on a research mission. They disguise themselves as a human family in suburban Ohio. They try to understand humanity and hilarity ensues. Carsey and Werner handled creative control to Bonnie and Terry Turner, a husband and wife writing team who'd made their name on Saturday Night Live. They wrote Wayne's World, Coneheads, Tommy Boy, and the Brady Bunch movie. And for 30 Rock, they had one specific actor in mind for the lead, John Lithgow. Lithgow was a serious actor. With 2 Oscar nominations, a Tony Award, he'd done Shakespeare and Broadway. His most recent film roles had been villains in movies like Cliffhanger and Ricochet. And he had one firm rule: no sitcoms. In his own words, Lithgow admitted that at that point in his career, he was a pretentiously high-minded actor who looked down on TV as a medium. It wasn't until he hosted SNL in the 80s that he realized he had a deep love for nutball farce and sketch comedy. The Turners knew this about him because they worked with him on SNL. They didn't just want a funny guy, they needed someone with his exact blend of high-caliber theater training and manic physical comedy genius. Or as they put it, the combination of Bugs Bunny and Errol Flynn. So here's the thing. They wrote Dick Solomon specifically for him. If Lithgow said no, the show doesn't happen. And it looked like that's exactly what was going to happen. They invited him to breakfast at the Four Seasons to make their pitch. Lithgow sat down, heard the words "for aliens," and immediately started planning his exit. He later admitted, "I just thought, how am I going to say no and get out of this as gracefully as I can?" But the more the Turners talked, the more the premise grew on him. This was something unique, an absurdist satire about the human condition, told through the eyes of beings who had no frame of reference for anything. Love, jealousy, mortality, sportsmanship, puberty. Every human experience would be brand new. And he was in. As for the rest of the cast, there was Kristen Johnston, a stage actress who'd never done television, who was cast as Sally Solomon after a Carsey Werner casting agent saw her in an off-Broadway play. There was French Stewart, who brought his signature squint to Harry Solomon, a physical comedy choice he made at his very first audition that became the character's defining trait. And a 14-year-old Joseph Gordon Levitt was cast as Tommy, the oldest and wisest alien trapped in a teenager's body. But the show needed one more piece, a human anchor, someone to ground the alien absurdity. The Turners wanted Jane Curtin, the former SNL Weekend Update anchor and star of Kate and Ally. Curtin, like John Lithgow, wanted nothing to do with it. "I can't do that," she told Bonnie Turner. "Just come out and do the pilot, then we'll talk," Bonnie replied. Curtin ultimately agreed to do 7 episodes. The show was ready to go, but there was one more problem. ABC was not ready to go. The Turners originally developed Third Rock for ABC, and after watching the pilot, they took a hard pass. So Carsey Werner did something bold. They asked out of their deal with ABC so they could shop it elsewhere. ABC actually agreed, but they played some sneaky games in the process. They waited until NBC had already set their fall schedule before releasing the show, assuming no one else would take it. But as it turned out, NBC did want it. They picked it up even after their schedule was locked and slotted it in as a mid-season replacement. And ABC, like the girl who dumped you but now sees pics of you and your new hot girlfriend on Facebook, was furious. They didn't think the show would get picked up by NBC and they got burned. And when you see the ratings and critical acclaim coming up, you will see why they were so upset. Third Rock from the Sun premiered on NBC on January 9th, 1996 and hit the earth running. The show debuted strong and kept climbing. Now, Critics were split at first. Some loved the absurdity, others thought the humor was too broad, but audiences didn't care. They'd never seen anything like John Lithgow throwing himself across furniture, screaming about the discovery of jealousy, or weeping uncontrollably at a sunset. It was fun to watch, and the cast was actually having a lot of fun too. Jane Curtin enjoyed it so much, in fact, that she elected to stay past the original 7 episodes. By the end of season 1, the show ranked number 22 in the Nielsen ratings, and season 2 was even bigger. The show climbed to number 20, averaging nearly 20 million viewers per episode. It was anchoring NBC's schedule and competing with the network's own juggernauts. And the awards started rolling in. People don't seem to remember this, but the show won a ton of Emmys. In 1997, it won 5 Primetime Emmy Awards from 8 nominations, the most of any show that year. John Lithgow won Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. He'd go on to be nominated every single year the show was on the air, winning 3 times. Kristen Johnston won Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series twice. The show racked up 31 Emmy nominations over its run. The show ABC rejected was now one of the most decorated comedies on television. And like all of these stories, when a show is doing well, something bad has to happen, and what happened to this show was bizarre. So NBC had a problem, an embarrassment of riches. It had too many hits. Seinfeld owned Thursday nights, Friends was a phenomenon, Frasier was a critical darling, ER was the #1 drama on television, Will and Grace was climbing, and as a result, Third Rock was about to become stuck in a scheduling nightmare. NBC treated Third Rock like a utility player. Because the show had a loyal audience, executives kept moving it around the schedule to prop up weaker time slots or counter-program against hits on other networks. Tuesday at 8:30, then Wednesday at 9, then Sunday at 7, then back to Tuesday, then Thursday wedged into a must-see TV block, then out again. The show moved to different nights and time slots repeatedly across its 6 seasons. It never had a permanent home. Every time the audience found it, NBC moved it again. And the ratings started to bleed. Season 3 dropped to number 22 in the Nielsen's with about 17 million viewers, still solid, but the momentum was stalling. But the real damage was in Season 4. The show dropped to number 77, averaging under 10 million viewers. The show kept slipping and sliding. In Season 5, it dropped to number 82, and behind the scenes, things were shifting. By the final season, Joseph Gordon Levitt was ready to move on. He was 19 and enrolled at Columbia University in 2000 to study history, literature, and French poetry. His appearances in Season 6 were cut to about half the episodes, and the show wrote it in as Tommy going off to college, which is exactly what was happening in real life. Ratings kept slipping, and midway through the season, NBC decided to end the show. Now, unlike ALF, which ended on a cruel cliffhanger, Third Rock got to end on its own terms. But it was still heartbreaking. The 2-part series finale, The Thing That Wouldn't Die, aired on May 22, 2001. The plot? The big giant head orders the Solomons to return to their home planet. Their mission on Earth is complete. Dick has to say goodbye to Mary, the woman he's loved for 6 years. Dick reveals his true alien identity to Mary, and she doesn't believe him at first, but then he asks her to think back over all the bizarre, inexplicable things that he's done over the years, and it clicks. It's actually quite funny to watch her facial expressions as this goes on. Great acting. Anyway, he asks her to come with him. She agrees. They all pile into the Rambler to beam away. But at the last moment, she panics. She can't do it. She can't leave Earth. She can't leave her life behind. Dick escorts her out of the car, and he makes a devastating choice. He wipes her memory of him, but leaves the feelings of love intact. She won't remember Dick Solomon, but she'll feel something she can't explain for the rest of her life. Harry leaves his coat behind for Mary to lie on until she wakes up. The family sits back in the Rambler. Sally starts to leak, she's crying. Tommy and Harry begin singing their mission song, and as the song reaches its crescendo, the 4 of them beam away, gone. The finale drew nearly 12 million viewers, ranking 18th for the week. Not bad for a show that had been bleeding its audience for years. But here's the thing many people don't know. They filmed an alternate ending. In the backup version, after Mary wakes up in the field, she finds a key in her hand and sits in the Rambler. She turns the ignition. Suddenly, a completely naked Dick appears in the passenger seat, begging her to come with him. Mary, having no memory of who this man is, screams. Dick yells, "Alien abduction!" and beams them both away. Fans are still divided over which one is better, but the creators ultimately went with the emotional version, and I think that was the right call. Now, the show has an interesting legacy that most people don't realize. First, it quietly laid the groundwork for the massive sitcom that followed, The Big Bang Theory. Long before Sheldon Cooper, Dick Solomon was the original brilliant academic who couldn't navigate basic human interaction. The show demonstrated that physics, intellectualism, and high-concept absurdity could anchor a mainstream network comedy, not as niche curiosities, but as engines for broad, accessible satire. But the show's most radical innovation came through Kristen Johnston's portrayal of Sally Solomon. In an era where female sitcom characters were almost always the grounded voice of reason, Sally was a masculine military commander trapped in the body of a tall, glamorous woman. She was allowed to be loud, aggressive, vain, violent, and physically unhinged. You can trace her DNA through every unfiltered female lead that followed, from Liz Lemon's neurotic chaos in 30 Rock to Dee Reynolds' feral energy in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The show also served as a bridge between two eras of television. Though filmed on a traditional multi-camera stage with a live audience, it carried the manic, surreal energy of a cartoon. Its rapid-fire physical comedy, reality-breaking cutaways, and exaggerated performances felt closer to The Simpsons than Cheers. Many TV scholars now point to Third Rock, alongside Malcolm in the Middle, as an early precursor to the fast-paced, single-camera comedies of the 2000s, like Arrested Development and Scrubs. And of course, it launched Joseph Gordon Levitt. He later credited the show and John Lithgow specifically as his mentors, teaching him the discipline that allowed him to pivot from a sitcom kid to one of the most respected indie film stars of his generation. As for Lithgow, the show destroyed any fear of typecasting. It proved he could master manic, over-the-top slapstick and then immediately pivot back to chilling drama, like his legendary Emmy-winning turn as the Trinity Killer on Dexter before that show went hard downhill. Anyway, Kristen Johnston also found her footing after the show, starring in The X's and later joining the cast of Mom, where she played a character that mirrored her own real-life journey through recovery. French Stewart and Jane Curtin stayed active, though Stewart often spoke about the difficulty of escaping the massive shadow of Harry Solomon's physical comedy. Third Rock never became huge like Friends or Seinfeld, and maybe if NBC had stopped meddling, it could have inched its way closer to that status, but it was still transformative in many ways. Even with all that network interference, the Solomons left their mark on the Third Rock from the Sun.